Now the nodes inside the group are enabled and we can run that workflow if we want. Let us add another primitive node to see how it adapts. Last time, when we connected a primitive node to a text field, it automatically converted the value into a string because that input expected text. Now, if we connect a primitive node to a math int node, it adapts differently. This time, it is converted into an integer value. You can see that now we can only enter numbers. It does not allow text, because this node expects an integer. Right now, the value is set to 5. Let me resize the node so we can see it better. You can clearly see that this one is an int, and the other one is a string. If we change this number and run the workflow, ComfyUI will rerun all the workflows on the canvas using the new values. In this simple example, it runs almost instantly. But later, when we use larger models, you will see that some workflows can take minutes to generate instead of seconds. So if you look at all the nodes in these workflows, you can clearly see that we use this easy-use custom node, and all the rest do not have that label. That means they come with ComfyUI by default. Let us go to the menu, then Edit, and choose Clear Workflow. Now I want to do a quick recap, just to make sure you assimilated some of the basics. We double-click on the canvas to bring up this search option so we can search for nodes. You type a word to search, like load, and then you can select a node, for example, the load image node. This node is used to load an image from your computer. If we click Choose File to load, we can navigate our computer and load an image. By the way, I asked Evo to include some images for this first episode in the input folder so you can have the same images I am using. The path is ComfyUI Easy Install, ComfyUI Input. Let us say I select this helmet, but it can be any image. We can choose Open, or we can double-click on the image and it will open. Now that the image is loaded, let us add another node, the Image Crop node, and connect it from left to right, from output to input. To remove a connection, you just drag from the output and release it somewhere on the canvas. It is like unplugging a cable and leaving it on the floor. Let us redo the connection. You can also click on the small dot in the middle of the connection and choose Delete, and it does the same thing as unplugging. Let us connect it again. We can hold Control and select multiple nodes by dragging with the left mouse button pressed. This lets us select multiple nodes at once. You can also hold Control and click on the nodes one by one. If you select a node by mistake, just click on it again to deselect it. Once nodes are selected, we can move them together. If you plan to move them a lot, you can also add them to a group. If you click on the canvas and drag, you are moving the canvas itself. This is useful when you have long workflows and want to see different parts of the workflow. Let us move these nodes to the left. Now double-click on the canvas and add a node called Preview. This time it is not Preview as text. We could add that too, but it would show numbers. Here we add Preview Image. This node is similar to Save Image, but it does not save the image in the output folder. It is useful when you just want to preview parts of a workflow and do not need to save the image. If you like the image, you can still save it. You can right-click on the image and choose Save Image, then save it anywhere you want on your hard disk. Let us cancel that and remove the Preview Image node. This time, let us add a Save Image node so we can save the result and then run the workflow again. Now the result is saved. Let us go to the desktop. The Easy Installer comes with a shortcut to the output folder. We double-click on it, and now we are in the output folder. You can see the path at the top. Here you can see all the images generated with ComfyUI. These images are saved in this folder. You can delete them, move them to different folders, or organize them however you want. I usually pick the images I need, move them into the project folder, and then delete the rest, because over time you will end up with thousands of images here. We can see the helmet image we just generated, but not the previous one from the Preview Image node. If we go back one folder to the main ComfyUI folder, we can see a temp folder. ComfyUI uses this folder to store preview images temporarily. The contents of this temp folder are deleted when you start ComfyUI again. So you can still recover preview images even if you did not save them right away, as long as you did not close ComfyUI yet. We can collapse a node using the top left gray dot and click it again to expand it. Once a node is selected, it has multiple options at the top. One very useful option is the info icon, which gives you more information about the node. You can close the properties panel from here. We can change the color of the node, and this symbol here is for subgraphs. Subgraphs are a bit more complex, so maybe in a later chapter or another episode we will talk more about them. This arrow lets you bypass the node, and if you click on these dots, it shows even more options for the node. For example, you can change the shape, change the color, or pin the node so it is fixed and cannot be moved. If we move these nodes apart to see the links, we can also hide the links from here. Be careful with that, because it can look like no nodes are connected. I never use this option, because I like to see how nodes are connected. It helps me understand the workflow better. If you do not like how the links look, there are ways to change their shape. I like the default look, but some people prefer other options. If we go to the bottom left or open the menu and go to Settings, we can change this. Let us click on Settings. Here we have many settings we can change. Let us search for Link, since we want to change how links are displayed. You can see the current one is called Spline under Link Render Mode. If we change it from Spline to Straight and close the settings, you can see the links are now straight, but they still adapt when you move the nodes. Let us go to Settings again and change it to Linear. Now the links are always straight lines. Let us change it back to the default, which is Spline. Now let us remove all the nodes. I personally prefer the spline view because it reminds me of sci-fi scenes with lots of cables hanging around. Let us double-click on the canvas and add a load image node again. Now let us add another node and search for upscale image. We will select the node called upscale image by and move it closer so we do not waste space on the canvas. Then we connect it to the workflow and add a save image node at the end so we have a complete workflow. If we run this now, we get the same image as before. That happens because some nodes have default values that do not change anything. They only start doing something once you change their parameters. In this case, the upscale value is set to 1. Scaling by 1 is like multiplying a number by 1, you get the same result. Now let us increase the scale by value to 2. When we run it again, the image is upscaled by 2 times, so we get double the resolution. This is similar to resizing an image in Photoshop. In this case, it does not use AI to add new detail, it simply enlarges the image. These upscale methods are different ways of resizing an image. Nearest exact copies pixels exactly, so it is very fast and keeps hard edges, but it can look blocky. Bilinear smooths pixels together, giving a softer result that can look slightly blurry. Area is mainly meant for downscaling and is not ideal for upscaling images. Bicubic uses more surrounding pixels to produce smoother and better looking results. Lanczos preserves detail and sharpness the best, but it is slower than the others. Let us say you do a lot of changes to a node, like titles, values, and colors, and you forget how the default values were. You can add the same node again and redo all the values and connections, or you can right-click on the node and choose Fix Node, Recreate. If you select that, the node goes back to its default state. If you right-click again, you also have the option to clone the node and move that clone wherever you want. You can also do this faster by holding Alt and dragging the node. You can remove a node from this menu, but pressing the Delete key is faster. We also have this pin option. If you use it, a pin appears at the top of the node, and now if you click and drag, the node does not move. It is pinned to the canvas. To move it again, you need to right-click and select Unpin. Sometimes, when you get workflows from the internet, some people stack many nodes on top of each other and pin them. It can look like there are only 2 nodes, even if there are 10 nodes behind one. I do not recommend doing this. If you do not want people to use your workflow, just do not share it. We also saw that we need to change values on some nodes for them to work. If we bypass a node, the workflow still runs and ignores that node. The links are still there, and the connection passes through the node. This is important because there is another mode where the connection does not pass through. Let us enable the node again using bypass. Now right-click on it and go to Mode. You will see the option Always, which means the node is active. there is also an option called Never. This mutes the node and makes it behave as if it does not exist. You can see that the node is now gray, not purple like bypass. When we run the workflow, we get an error. That is because the node is not passing anything through, so the next node does not receive the image it expects. It is like cutting the cable where that node was. Let us remove that node and delete the link as well. If we run the workflow again, the result is the same. The image is missing because there is no connection. Let us go to the menu, then Edit, and click Undo. You can also use Ctrl+Z multiple times until you get back to the state you want. I will undo until everything is active again. Let us zoom out with the mouse wheel and add a group. Name your group in a way that explains what the nodes do. Do not name it something generic like My Group. You can move the group around, and you will notice that it works like a magnet. If a node is inside the group area, it stays inside. Let us make the group larger and move it around so you can see that nodes are sticking to it. Now adjust the group size and move the nodes so it looks cleaner. Workflows can get quite large, so I like to optimize the space to make them easier to read and navigate. Once the nodes are positioned, hold Ctrl and select all the nodes. You will see that only the nodes are selected, not the group. Now right-click and choose Fit Group to Nodes. The group will resize to fit the nodes tightly. Now we can move the group, and it does not take much space. Groups can have more options, especially when using custom nodes like RG3. If we go to Settings in ComfyUI, we have General Settings, but we also have settings for custom nodes. For example, for RG3, we have extra settings here. I can click this button to open them. RG3 is installed when you use the Easy Installer. If you install ComfyUI manually, you need to install RG3 from the manager. We will talk more about custom nodes later. You can also access the same RG3 settings directly from here, which is faster. If we scroll down, we have settings for groups. For example, there is an option called Show Fast Group Toggles in Group Headers. Let us enable it. You can choose when to show it, always, or on hover. I will leave it on hover and save the settings. Now, when I hover over the group, you can see extra buttons in the top right. From here, we can bypass all the nodes in the group easily. We also have an option to mute the group. This is similar to setting nodes to never. When a group is muted, the nodes inside it do not run at all, and the workflow behaves as if they do not exist. Bypass still lets the workflow run through the nodes, mute does not. Let us make the group active again. We can also run the workflow using the play button on the group. We can change values, for example, use smaller values to get a smaller image, maybe half the size. There are many more things you can do with groups and switch style nodes, but we will cover those in later episodes. I told you at the beginning to leave the Nodes to option turned off. At the moment of this recording, it is still in beta and has some bugs. Maybe over time they will fix everything and it will become stable. If I activate it, you can see that it changes how the nodes look. For most nodes, things still work in a similar way, but this change exists so they can add more functionality to nodes. With the current system they use, there are limitations in what nodes can do, and the new node version should give them more possibilities to build better nodes. Instead of the gray dot, you get an arrow that points down and then to the right when the node is collapsed. The inputs are placed on the edge of the node, and some nodes have more options. For example, in Load Image, you can see previews of images from the input folder, and you can also browse for another image on your disk. However, for older workflows, this can slightly change node sizes and mess up the layout. Some nodes might not work yet until the node creators update them. Because of that, until everything is fixed and stable, I recommend leaving Nodes 2 turned off. Just a quick reminder that from mode you can mute a node by setting it to never. This is useful when a workflow is big and has a lot of branches. You can mute a branch of that workflow, and it will still run without errors, as long as there are no nodes after the muted ones that expect an input. To turn the node back on, you go to Mode and choose Always. We also have shape options for nodes, but these are only decorative. They just change the corners of the node. By default, the corners are rounded. There is also the card option, which rounds only 2 corners. Personally, I do not think it is worth spending much time on this. To remove a group, You can select it and press the Delete key, or you can right-click on it, choose Edit Group, and then Remove. This only removes the group container, not the nodes inside it, unlike folders in other systems. Let us select these two nodes while holding Control and press Delete to remove them. Then add an image crop node and connect the link to it. After that, let us add a preview image node, since we are only testing. With these settings, we get a crop from the top left corner of the image. Let us arrange the nodes, then hold Control, select both nodes, and press Ctrl+C to copy, and then Shift+V to paste them with the links. Since we have them copied, let us paste again to get a third branch. Right now, all the settings are the same, so all three give the same result. We can change the x-coordinate on one to get the bottom right corner of the image. For another one, let us change the y-coordinate to get the bottom left corner. Now when we run it, we split the image into 3 pieces. You could add another one for the bottom right corner to get the missing part. That is homework for you, to figure out the correct coordinates. Now, if we change the input image and run it again, you can see how useful this can be. In a later episode, we will learn how to load multiple images from a folder and automate this process, so we can apply it to all images in a folder. Now select all the nodes in the workflow using the shortcut Ctrl+A and then press Delete to remove everything. It is time for another short break. This has been a long chapter, and I want to make sure you have time to absorb the information. Take a few minutes, press pause, get a drink, or step away from the screen, and then come back. Now, I do not know what learning method works best for you, but I can tell you one method that usually works very well for video tutorials. First, watch the entire tutorial from start to finish, without stopping too much. This helps you build a general understanding of what is possible and how things fit together. Then, watch it a second time, pause the video, and follow along step by step inside ComfyUI. After that, try to repeat the same steps without the tutorial playing, just from memory. Once you are comfortable, start experimenting. Try changing nodes, parameters, or settings that were not covered in the tutorial. And if something does not work or you get stuck, that is completely normal. You can always go back to the tutorial, rewatch a part, or ask questions on Discord. Learning ComfyUI is not about speed. It is about understanding. It is time to build a workflow from scratch. But first, let us go to Workflows. Open the Getting Started folder, and open workflow number 1, the one we used in a previous chapter. What I want to do now is give you an analogy so you can understand what is happening here with all these nodes connected, so it makes more sense. I will use a note node and add some info next to each node. You do not have to do that. Just watch and pay attention. I will open the same workflow, but with those notes added next to each node, and I will explain each one in detail. You probably noticed by now that when we generate images with AI, we usually download a file called a model. Sometimes people call it a model, and sometimes they call it a checkpoint. In practice, they usually mean the same thing. A model is the trained AI itself. It contains everything the AI learned during training, like styles, shapes, and how images are formed. The word checkpoint comes from machine learning. During training, the model is saved at different points in time, called checkpoints. Those checkpoints are what we download and use. So when you hear model or checkpoint, you can think of them as the same thing, the trained AI file that does the image generation. In ComfyUI, you will often see the term load checkpoint, but what you are really doing is loading the model you want to use. We can think of the model as the photographer we want to hire. The load checkpoint node is the step where we actually hire that photographer. Depending on what the photographer learned during training, they will be good at different types of photos. That is why there are so many different models available. Just like in real life, some photographers specialize in portraits, others in landscapes, macro photography, or food photography. AI models work in a very similar way. The better and more complex the training of a photographer, the more expensive they usually are. In our case, that cost is not money, but computer power. Larger and more advanced models usually need more VRAM and a stronger graphics card to run properly. To keep things simple, for now we are hiring one photographer. We will use a model called Juggernaut Reborn, and this is the photographer that will generate our images. So now that we hired the photographer, what comes next? We need to give instructions to that photographer about what we want to get and what we want to avoid. These instructions are called prompts. We usually use a positive prompt to describe what we want to see in the image and a negative prompt to describe what we want to avoid. In ComfyUI, we use the same node for both. I just colored one green for the positive prompt and one red for the negative prompt so they are easier to recognize. The node we use is called Clip Text Encode. This node takes our written text and translates it into a form that the model can understand. In simple terms, Clip Text Encode acts like a translator between human language and the AI. It turns words into instructions that the photographer can follow during the photo shoot. Besides giving instructions on how the photo should look, we also need to decide how big the photo will be. For that, we use the empty latent image node. This node is like choosing an empty photo paper before taking the photo. Here is where we decide the width and height of the image. We are defining the size of the photo before it even exists. At this stage, there is still no image. It is just an empty space where the photo will be created. Once the photo shoot happens, the final image will always respect the size we set here. Now it is time for the photo shoot. The K-sampler node is the photo shoot itself. This is where the photographer follows the instructions from the prompts and uses the empty photo paper to take the photo. Each different seed is like taking a new photo of the same scene. The idea is the same, but the result is slightly different every time. The K-sampler controls how the image is generated. It decides how many steps the photographer takes, how much randomness is allowed, and how closely the final photo follows the instructions. You do not need to understand every parameter right now. What matters is that the K-sampler is the core of the workflow, where the actual image creation happens. Everything before the K-sampler prepares the photo shoot. Everything after it finishes the photo. After the photo shoot, the image is created, but it is not visible yet. That is because the K-sampler does not produce a normal image. It produces something called a latent, which you can think of as a hidden version of the photo. It contains the information of the image, but it is not in a format we can actually view. This is where VAE decode comes in. The VAE decode node is like the darkroom in photography. The photo already exists, but it still needs to be developed to become visible. So the VAE decode takes that latent result and converts it into a real image that we can see, preview, and save. Without this node, the workflow can still generate something, but you would not be able to view the final photo because it is still in that hidden latent form. And finally, the Save Image node is where the finished photo is delivered to the client. After the VAE decode step, we usually add a node that either previews or saves the image. Preview nodes let us see the result inside ComfyUI, while the Save Image node writes the final image to disk. Without one of these output nodes, the workflow has no final result. In our photo studio analogy, this is the moment where the developed photo is either shown to the client or delivered as the final file. Now let us zoom out and look at the entire process. First, we load a model from our disk. This is like hiring a photographer. Then we give instructions. The positive prompt describes what we want, for example, a close-up portrait of a pet. The negative prompt describes what we want to avoid, for example, saying we do not want dogs. Next, we decide how big the photo should be using the empty latent image node. This is where we choose the size of the photo before it is taken. Now let us run the workflow. You can see that all these instructions are passed into the K-sampler, where the image is actually created. The K-sampler is the photo shoot. It uses steps and different settings, similar to camera settings like shutter speed or aperture, to decide how the photo is taken. After that, the image goes through VAE decode, where it is converted from latent space into actual pixels. This is like developing the photo in a dark room. And finally, we save the image. This is when the photographer delivers the finished photo to the client. Every image generation workflow in ComfyUI follows this same basic idea, even when it becomes more complex. Let us do some quick experiments. What happens if I change the negative prompt, the instructions where we say what we want to avoid? For example, if I say I do not want a cat, it will probably give me another pet that is not a cat, and we might get a dog instead. If we run it again, it is like taking another photo of a pet, because the seed is random. Now we can change the seed to be fixed. When the seed is fixed, each time we use the same prompt, the same settings, and the same seed, we should get the exact same image. If I try to run it again, you can see that nothing happens. The result would be the same, so ComfyUI does not even bother to generate it again. If we change a setting, like the seed, then it lets us generate again, and we get a different image. If we go back to the previous seed, we are back to the same image we had before, generated with that seed. Now that we kind of understand how it works, let us click on this plus sign and build the same workflow from scratch. Double-click on the canvas and search for Load. Usually it is either Load Checkpoint or Load Diffusion Model, but in some cases there are special loaders for specific models. Now that we have the node, we select the model. Since we did not download more models yet, we only have one, Juggernaut Reborn. So we hired our photographer. Now let us give it instructions. Search for prompt, and we can find this Clip Text Encode node. Let us move it next to the other node. I like to change the color to green for the positive prompt. Right-click and clone the node, or just hold Alt and drag the node to make a copy. For this second one, let us change the color to red.